بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. It's my delight to be here and to talk to you. First of all, I would like to thank the Institute of Islamic Science for hosting this talk, and for the ISSI for inviting me and organizing this series of talks. This comes in on the occasion of publishing my book, God, Nature and the Cause. This book is part of an endeavor to show that Kalam, Islamic Kalam, can play a contemporary role in many fields, many activities, including the Islamic approach to natural philosophy. And being a physicist, I have actually found since 1989, when it was my first encounter with Kalam books, original Kalam books. I studied actually personally the original Kalam books, the Kalam مقالات الأشعري and الشامل في أصول الدين, التمهيد للباقلاني. I also studied some of the books of معتزلي كلام, which is القاضي عبد الجبار المغني في أبواب العدل والتوحيد, أبو رشيد النيسابوري المسائل في الخلاف, and many other books, including أحمد بن متويه, الحسن بن متويه التذكرة في الجواهر والأعراض. And that I have done after, of course, becoming a professional physicist. I was really surprised how much physics you can find in Kalam. And this was called by Al-Ash'ari, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, in his book مقالات الإسلاميين واختلاف المصلين. It was called Daqiq al Kalam. Perhaps it's not very famous, Daqiq and Jalil al Kalam, but I think now we need to classify the works which deals with natural philosophy under Daqiq al Kalam, and the work which deals with ilahiyat, divinity, as Jalil al Kalam. My talk will be restricted to the natural philosophy part, that's to say physics. And I want to make one important introduction in this occasion. It's not part of the lecture, but rather it is part of the whole endeavor in this respect. My message is to Malaysia, actually. During the last 4 decades, Malaysia has achieved great progress in several fields of social and economic activities. These achievements has to be sustained, and such a sustainment we have to learn from the history of civilizations. This history, the history of civilization, tells us that a nation without a strong base of profound system of thought cannot achieve sustainability in social, political, and economic growth. If you don't have a strong base of thought, then you may face some problems. Problems that may deviate the political or social systems in a way unexpected sometimes. Consequently, peaceful social and economic systems cannot be maintained by a profound system of thought, which I am calling for in the Islamic world in general, and Malaysia and Turkey specifically, because they are growing nations. By a profound system of thought, I specifically mean the overwhelming and dominating principles of the majority of people, and that can guide the approach of their thinking. In this respect, the elite of the society can play a major role in dealing with emergent problems, as well as correcting the pathways of the nation whenever it deviates away from the proper principles which preserves nation's identity. In our modern world, sometimes we need to consult science, even on religious matters or religious questions. Social and on religious questions, certainly on questions dealing with social, political, and economic activities. Traditional fiqh cannot provide us with firm and reliable answers, because the developed has changed a lot since the 7th century after Hijrah. We have changed a lot. New things came into on the table, and much water has passed, as they say, below the bridges. We cannot do with the narrated instructions alone. We need to operate our rationale, at least to put those narrations in context. The traditional kalam has to be further developed in order to be capable to deal with science and scientific methodologies. Therefore, we need to revive kalam, in my opinion, and further develop it within a framework that makes it capable with the modern, or compatible with the modern scientific methodology. Fortunately, we don't have to start from nothing. We actually have the foundations that can furnish the basis for our approach. We have Daqiq al Kalam, which was construed from the basis of the Islamic creed. It's a wide scope worldview which considers the world view in its physical context. I agree. But then we can further develop our project into the Jalil al-Kalam to deal with other social, economic problems. In this talk, I will show that mutakallimun, actually, here is one quotation from William Craig. He is an American philosopher, contemporary philosopher, who devised or reiterated the so-called Kalam cosmological principle. And this man identified the fact, recognized the fact that Kalam was ignored for a long time, while it could serve a lot of fields at the same time. My interest in Kalam actually started, as I said, in 1989. And after studying these original books, I could find that the Mutakallimun were a group of Islamic theologians and thinkers appeared during the 2nd century after Hijrah and continued to be effective until the end of the, you can say, the 6th century, to be very effective, because earlier they were prevented from spreading their ideas by the Al-Qadiri declaration. Al-Qadir declaration. Al-Qadir was one of the Abbasid caliph who issued an order in 421, I believe, and this order by which Kalam discussions were prevented, including the Kalam books. Many of the books were lost in this, according to this Al-Qadri declaration. Obviously, it was meant basically to prevent Mu'tazili from creating problems, social problems. But I can also recognize that the Ash'ari were also affected by this declaration. However, ideas remain to be a vital part of the Islamic theology. In Arabic, kalam means speech or collection of words, basically, or it is a discourse. A dialogue also is a meaning for kalam. Philosophically, kalam is a collection of concepts, as you know, assumptions and principles, problems that tries to explain the relation between God and the physical world. Here I mean Daqiq al Kalam, actually, in accordance with the Islamic creed. Classical Kalam form the base of Sharia. Usul al-Din is part of the curricula of Usul al-Din. And that's why it remains to be an important topic. We have two divisions of Kalam according to the classification I find in the traditional books. Jalil al-Kalam, which deals with ilahiyat, and Daqiq al Kalam, which deals with physics or nature. Jalil al-Kalam also deals with divinity, divine attributes, etc. Man's free will, and the counter proposal of self-acquisition of action, which was brought by the Ash'ari. Daqiq al Kalam deals with creation, eternity of the world, space, time, motion, force, matter, causality, etc. As I said, Kalam stopped for long time, and we can say that Muslims were only relying on the fuqaha. No longer Kalam thoughts were developed. It stopped in about the 600. After Al-Ghazali, you can say, of course, Fakhruddin al-Razi had and is the people who followed later, like Aduddin al-Iji, Taftazani, etc. They, Al-Baydawi, Saifuddin al-Amidi, they had a kalam, but as far as I can see, they are re-chewing the same gum of the previous generations. Fakhruddin al-Razi, rahmatullahi alayh, introduced philosophical terms into the kalam. And he was actually, he did contribute many positive points of thought, but at the same time, involving philosophy has departed from their original approach of mutakallimun. That's why they call them the late mutakallimun. Okay, the original kalam was, as we read in history, was because of the question whether this sinner who makes fatal sins is to be considered mu'min or kafir. And as they say in the history, the story, that Wasil ibn Ata said he is not kafir, not mu'min, not a believer, not a kafir, but a fasiq. Manzila bayna al-manzilatayn. And then Wasil ibn Ata departed from Al-Hasan al-Basri radiyallahu anhu and formed his own school, which were called Mu'tazila. Some historian says because Al-Hasan al-Basri said, "i'tazalana Wasil." Wasil left us and formed his own group, Wasil ibn Ata. Yeah, of course, Kalam, when Muslim came in touch with other nations, with other religions, they were following the ayah, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." So you should have a dialogue in a proper way, civilized way. That is why Muslims created atmosphere of dialogue between civilization, not the atmosphere of a clash of civilization as we see now in the world. There were two schools of Kalam, as you know, the Mu'tazili, which is the older school, and the Ash'aris. Mu'tazili were formed by Wasil ibn Ata, and later Abu al-Hudayl al-Allaf, Abu Hashim and Abu Ali al-Jibai, Abu Ali al-Jibai and his son Abu Hashim al-Jibai, etc. And you have then the Ash'aris school, which was formed by Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, departing from Mu'tazili. The actual difference between Mu'tazili and Ash'ari, these are actually names which you may know, of course, the founder and the followers of Mu'tazili. And you have also some historians of Kalam, biographers and historians like Abu Rashid al-Naysaburi and Qadi Abd al-Jabbar and Al-Hasan ibn Mataway. It's not Ahmed, it's Al-Hasan ibn Mataway. They have written a lot of the history of Kalam in natural philosophy, specifically. The Ash'arites we know Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, and we know Abu Bakr al-Baqillani and Abu al-Ma'ali al-Juwayni. Al-Ghazali, I consider him also a mutakallim in his book Tahafut al-Falasifa. Later Kalam, as I said, was mixed with philosophy. And the Maturidi, the Maturidi school I didn't mention here, because it's more or less in common with the Ash'ari, actually. Many principles are in common with Ash'ari, number one. Number two, I didn't see much in Daqiq al Kalam of their contributions. I consider Daqiq al Kalam as the Islamic philosophy of nature, as we will see just now. I should mention that a fact which maybe very few people know about concerning Kalam, that both the Mu'tazili and Ash'ari and even Maturidi agreed on Daqiq al Kalam. When you study Al-Qadi Abd-Jabbar, for example, who died in 415, about 30 years after Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, you see that Al-Qadi Abd-Jabbar, who is Mu'tazili, very strong Mu'tazili, borrowing same examples of al-Baqillani from the book Al-Tamheed, when he talks about causality, when he talks about indeterminism of the world, indeterminism of natural events in the world. He borrows these very same examples. In general, you can be sure, and there are many examples and proofs, that Mu'tazili and Ash'ari had no conflict on natural philosophy. Their conflict comes from Jalil al-Kalam, the question of divinity, the chapter of divine attributes, the chapter on reward and punishment, the hell and heavens, etc. And most important is their problem of Khalq al-Quran, as you know, the creation of the Quran. So here lies the problem. It's in Jalil al-Kalam. That's why when I talk here, I will always say mutakallimun, and I don't specify whether it is Mu'tazili or Ash'ari or Maturidi, because they are all the same in this respect. The main source for mutakallimun is the Quran. Actually, it was the Quran. There is one very important item or topic which should be discussed here or mentioned at least, and that is their methodology. They start from revelation, the Wahy, the Quran. Through reason, they get to understand the world. This is the Islamic methodology. The Greek methodology, represented by the philosophers, including Muslim philosophers, goes like this. It goes like world, you have the world, you see, you observe, through reason, you devise your God. You understand God. This is the opposite approach of the mutakallimun. Completely opposite. Mutakallimun starts from God, from the Quran, through reason to explain the world. Of course, no way in 1 hour lecture I can deliver everything. It's these are, you can say, only flashes of what I'm going to present here, because of the shortage of the time. Otherwise, I can explain many other things. A thorough investigation into the legacy of Kalam shows that mutakallimun have devised some fundamental principles and developed the necessary concepts that are needed to give a comprehensive theory describing the world in accordance with God's revelations as narrated by the Quran. The following principles, I find, are deduced from the original writings of the mutakallimun. Mutakallimun devised, I wouldn't say adopted. They adopted it from nowhere. Actually, they devised 5 principles. The first one is the principle of temporality. The world has a beginning in time, with time. Not in time, with time. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahmatullah alayh, explained that in the book of Tahafut al-Falasifa, the incoherence of the philosophers. He stressed that the world is not created in time, but with time. And this is a fact from the Quran, that the world is temporal and contingent. William Craig used this only principle to, as I said, reiterate in a modern style what he called the Kalam cosmological principle. مبدأ الحدوث, temporality. But actually there are other 4 principles which constitute a whole curricula of natural philosophy. Let us see the second principle. The second principle is atomism. Mutakallimun said that the world is atomic, is not continuous, it is discrete. And this led them to invent the Islamic atom. Some people may think that this atom was actually borrowed from the Greeks, but this is not true. Shlomo Pins, in his book Studies in Islamic Atomism, which was published in Germany in 1936 and was translated into Arabic 1948 and translated into English in 1998. It was in the Hebrew University. There is a new translation into English. Spends pages and pages comparing the Islamic atom with the Greek atom. And then later he starts in a research, in a very deep research, comparing properties of the Islamic atom with the Indian atom. And he finds no similarities. Nowhere you can say that the Islamic atom is Greek origin or Indian origin. Harry Wolfson the Harvard scholar, well-known Harvard scholar, he has a book of 900 and so pages, 970 pages about, called The Philosophy of the Kalam, published in 1976. And he also discussed the Islamic atom in more than 40 pages of the book and concludes that there is no written text which proves that the Islamic atom is borrowed from Greek or from Indians. Although he spelled it in public, in writing, that he believes, only believes, without evidence, that Muslims borrowed this concept from Greek. Why? Because he says, and this is laughable actually, it's funny, he says, how come these underdeveloped Bedouins, in less than 100-year time, they become so advanced philosophers? The Arabs, coming from the deserts with very poor knowledge of nature, and they come and devise a very advanced concept of atom. This is very strange. Therefore, they should have some source from a great civilization, either Greek or India. Unfortunately, Wolfson is overlooking the fact that these Arabs were nothing when they had no Islam. But once they became Muslim, yeah, all of a sudden they became genius. Islam makes you a genius if you follow the proper Islam. If you recite the Quran with open mind, and read it in Arabic, you become a genius. You can see binurillah, as they say. Tara binurillah. And this is the hidayah. So Allah hadahum. هؤلاء العرب, these Arabs who were nothing. In many respects, the hidayah comes. One of them comes the rational hidayah. So, the difference between Islamic atom, by the way, and Greek and Indian atom, especially the Greek one. The Greek atom is an object which is like, may have different shapes, but it is one single object. Philosophically, it exists as an ontological object. Muslims, Islamic atom, is composed of two parts, not one piece, not one object. It is the jawhar, which is fixed and which is abstract, by the way. Originally, in the original Kalam, the jawhar was abstract. Only in the late Kalam, they tried to materialize it, and this was wrong, in my opinion. It's abstract. And then this abstract thing will materialize, will become something, exist, once it accepts the arad, the accident, so to speak. I don't like to use substance and accident, because this is Aristotelian concepts. Sometimes jawhar is called substance and arad is called accident when we write in English. But I don't feel that this is expressing the proper meaning of jawhar and arad. Jawhar should be called jawhar. It could be translated in the meaning, but as a term it should be used jawhar. Arad is something that it is the property that jawhar will accept. You will say, well, you said the jawhar is abstract, doesn't exist. Well, it exists as an epistemology. But mind you, the jawhar cannot stand a second, not a second. A blank time, 1 over 1 billionth and billionth and billionth of a second alone. In physics, quantum physics, we have an object called psi. When we want to describe the electron on board and in books, we write psi equal, and then we express the different physical parameters. But when you ask any physicist and you say, is psi a physical quantity? He will say, no, it's not a physical quantity. Why? He says, well, a physical quantity has to be measurable. And the psi is by itself, on its own, is not measurable because it could be complex. What do you mean by complex? He would say, well, I mean it contains two constituents, real part and imaginary part. Imaginary, by the way, does not mean something that you imagine. No. Imaginary in the mathematical sense, a number multiplied by square root of -1. Square root of -1. So, psi is not a physical quantity. It is an abstract quantity, therefore. Only psi square, the square of this, is a physical quantity which is proportional to the probability of finding the particle at certain position, certain time. Psi square. Therefore, we have something in physics like that. I mean to say, in modern science, you can accept the concept that something mujarrad, abstract, exists. Jawhar is an abstract. If you go to the original writing of Kalam, it's abstract. It becomes realistic. It becomes measurable once it picks up a property, one or more. Property like what? If you read the old Kalam, they say property like smell, like color, like size. These are all properties, and any other property, temperature, heat. Yeah. Once it acquires the property, it becomes realistic, measurable, physical. Okay. This is a very novel concept, actually. Let's go to the third principle. Accidents, by the way, a'rad will never stay. A'rad, according to the third principle, are under continuous creation. Under continuous creation. That is to say, any property acquired by the jawhar will not stay for long. It can stay a moment, but no more. What is a moment? A moment is the shortest period of time you can ever imagine. In physics now we have something called the Planck time. Planck time is 10 to the power minus 43 seconds. So that is the moment, according to what we can compare between Kalam and physics, we can say it's a Planck time, maybe. Very, very short time. accidents are accidents are temporal and are ever changing. And through this, the mutakallimun devised the third principle, continuous creation. They brought this principle. You tell me where in the Quran I can find the necessity for continuous creation. You can find it in Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyu al-qayyum. For God to be active in the world every moment, He has to recreate the world. How He recreates the world? He recreates the accidents. Since the jawhar is abstract quantity, you don't have to worry about that the jawhar exists. It doesn't exist. Once is deprived of the property, it doesn't exist ontologically. Philosophically, we say it doesn't exist in the world. So, through continuous recreation, God can achieve two things. His qayyumiyya on the world, at the same time He can change the properties. He doesn't necessarily recreate, that's how mutakallimun put it, recreate with the very same. He is at liberty to choose any other property from all contingent available properties. Yeah. They also find in the Quran that God has فَعَّالٌ لِمَا يُرِيد. God has absolute free will. Every event is in the universe, therefore, is contingent. And here they find that the world should be, yes, there are laws. There are laws in nature. But these laws has to be indeterministic, not wajib, احتمال, جوازية, ليست واجبة. العالم ممكن, the world is possible, but not determined to be. It's possible to be. It's contingent. And this is actually the fourth principle. So it's probabilistic. This means that the events in nature, according to Kalam, are always probabilistic. This obviously affects the concept of causality. The fifth principle, for my surprise, was the relativity of space and time. Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, in his book Al-Fisal fi al-Milal wal-Nihal, says that the concept of time and the concept of space, according to us, he says, means Muslims, is completely different from those of the philosophers, in the sense that philosophers' space and time are absolute, while ours is not as such. That is the exact wording of Ibn Hazm. Then Al-Ghazali comes in his book Tahafut al-Falasifa, and he says time should be treated on equal footing as space, and he discusses the above and the below, al-fawq wal-taht, and he says al-qablu wal-ba'd, the after and the before, or the before and the after, is same as فوق وتحت. Same. Because space is a dimension and time is a dimension too. That is in تهافت الفلاسفة. And exactly he says the word البعد فالبعد الزماني كالبعد المكاني. كالبعد المكاني. بعد. So it is a dimension. See how advanced this way of thinking. I think physicists would appreciate that, because they know that the world didn't know that time is a dimension until 1905, when Albert Einstein proposed special relativity. They further say that space has no time has no meaning without space, and space has no meaning without time. Because when you talk about space, you should know that it is ever changing. So you have to specify the time with it. Otherwise you are talking nonsense. You cannot say this is a space as such. You say a space with such and such dimension exists at what time? And when you say time, I will come to see you. When? 4 o'clock. Where? Because I am on the move. The world is on the move, according to Kalam, the third principle. Ever changing. A'rad is ever changing. So space and time has to be interwoven. And that was written in their books. I am not projecting my own physics ideas. I have in my book Daqiq al Kalam, which will be published in, I hope, in a few months' time, it is all explained with substantial evidence from the original Kalam writings. This is very important. Otherwise, it will not be viable. Not be a viable thought. These are the 5 principles, out of which, you have principles, then you have problems. Obviously, within the principles, you have concepts. So in the structure of Kalam, we have concepts like Jawhar, Arad, etc. You have principles, the 5 principles which I mentioned are obviously against the 5 principles of Greek philosophy. In a Greek philosophy, you don't have temporality, you have eternity. The world is eternal. You don't have atomism, but continuity. You don't have the third principle, which is recreation, but you have a fixed laws and fixed properties for the world. You see? You don't have indeterminism and probabilistic behavior. You have fixed behavior of things. Fire will always burn the cotton, 100%. No way you can see an event throwing the cotton into fire and it will not burn. No way. Absolutely no way. That is the Greek philosophy. Kalam philosophy says, yes, we do know that the cotton will burn when you throw it into fire. And if you do 100 times, it will burn. 1,000 times, it will burn. But in principle, we have the belief that God can prevent it from being burnt. This story has been discussed in many books, including also Tahafut al-Falasifa of Al-Ghazali. No matter how the probability is low, no matter, even if it is 10 to the power minus 100, from the philosophical point of view, there is a non-zero chance. And that makes the world indeterministic. That's what they say. Now, when we come to evaluate these thoughts, we say, until 1900 AD, any physicist will refuse to the 5 principles of Kalam, of Daqiq al Kalam, obviously. And he will say, Greek philosophy is the correct. But after 1900, we have a new physics, what we call now the modern physics, by which we discovered that the world has a beginning, not eternal. The world is atomic, discrete, starting with Max Planck and Niels Bohr. Atomic. The world is atomic. Everything is atomic, except time. But time, according to Kalam, is also atomic. They have the atom of time, the ana. And then we discovered, by the quantum mechanics, that the world is indeterministic. There is always the chance to have something breaking the formal behavior, the formal natural law of nature. It could be broken. And we discover that the world is probabilistic. Events in nature are probabilistic. And later in 1905, we discovered that space-time are interwoven. So after 1900, one can say that Kalam proved to be correct. Daqiq al Kalam proved to be correct. Now I am calling for revival of this heritage, this legacy, great legacy of Mutakallim, because it's not for historical reasons only. It's not just nostalgic حنين للماضي, nostalgic intentions, but it is something which can provide Muslims with a new era in their thinking, in science, social sciences, in physical sciences, biological, etc., and social and political, economic sciences. In every respect, we have always the possibility now with Kalam. We have the tools to develop. We can develop these tools further. We need not to necessarily now engage in counter Jalil al-Kalam and reiterate the same old stories of the differences and problems of Mu'tazili and Ash'ari. Need not to do that. We can first of all establish our Daqiq al Kalam properly, our view in this respect, through such gathering of academicians and researchers, the students. And by the way, Daqiq al Kalam has even new ideas which can contribute to solve problems in contemporary physics, even in physics. For example, In physics, we have now the persisting problem of measurement, quantum measurement. Kalam, through recreation principle, can explain, can give a very good rational interpretation to the problem of measurement in quantum mechanics. I have a paper published in the proceeding of one conference. In fact, I was given a grant small grant, by Templeton Foundation to investigate this question. And I proposed a solution to the problem of measurement through recreation. In motion, they said, by the way, you physicists, other colleagues from physics, mutakallimun have different notion of velocity. They don't consider the faster body covering larger distance in a shorter time, but they consider the faster body is the body which is moving on a trajectory with less points of sukoon. So they consider the motion being sukoon and motion. There's always sukoon along the trajectory, sakanat. So if you have a trajectory, this is very interesting, but I haven't done research on this to realize it. I have tried to formulate it in mathematical, simple mathematical equations, by the way. Incidentally, Al-Nazzam, Ibrahim al-Nazzam, who is Mu'tazili, introduced the concept of tafra. Tafra means jump. And this guy, al-Nazzam, was opposed by others, mutakallimun, saying that your idea is not acceptable. How come a body moves from here to here by jumping, not passing through the space in between? And he says that could happen. Max Jemer, the philosopher of science, the German philosopher of science who died a few years ago, says in his book, The Philosophy of Quantum Mechanics, page 159, Al-Nazzam was forerunner of quantum jump. And Max Jemer is a very decent and well-known scholar. It's not an easy, I couldn't say that, by the way. I couldn't say that myself because they would say, well, you are exaggerating. But when Max Jemer say it, I obviously repeat it and repeat it. So they have a concept on motion. I don't know. It has to be studied. The Mu'tazili, for example, they have the concept of vacuum. They had very advanced understanding of vacuum, void, vacuum. They even, their ideas somehow reminds me of Dirac Hall theory, because they consider the vacuum as being composed of jawahir who accept the a'rad, the properties, but they say there is one property which is not there, tahayyuz, locality, occupying, occupancy. And this is a whole.
People say that, is it true? Can you agree that when people say kalam, especially kalam, Islamic science, were stagnant, people stopped doing that.
Stagnated.
Stagnated because of Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali hits with a small hammer and died. People stopped doing that. People in Malaysia follow.
They follow Al-Ghazali or?
bit of French, stop French. Number one. And number two, the issue of EPR, Einstein,
Podolsky-Rosen paradox. Yeah.
paradox, which was explained by some Western philosophers. I think it's a high time for Muslims to integrate it according to Kalam.
Yeah.
And the issue of non-deterministic universe, the locality of universe, or indivisible whole of universe,
Non-locality.
non-local quantum mechanics.
Yes.
Things can happen
Yes.
at any time without any signal or traveling between the two instantaneously. All these, I think, Muslims should be able to explain according to Islamic principle of Kalam. And also whether in the future we will have theory. Is it possible to have another theory that supersedes quantum theory with the hidden variable theory, for example, where we can attach a variable so that the universe will no longer be indeterministic universe. All right. My last question is, people talk about Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
My understanding is that it is totally different from Ahl Sunnah. We have Ahl Sunnah and Shia. But to say that Ahl Sunnah is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is not that. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, to my understanding, is the Ash'ariyah. Ash'ariyah, when he, to differentiate him from Mu'tazila, he termed his group as Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which is different from Ahl Sunnah. And therefore, Salafi, they are not Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
Really?
I mean, they are Ahl Sunnah.
Yeah. See, but not Jama'ah.
Yeah. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the group that is, you have Mu'tazili, Jabariyah, Mu'tazili, and then Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which is related to theology, rather than Ahl Sunnah, which differentiate themselves from Shia.
They are Shia Ahl Sunnah.
Shia.
What about Khawarij, by the way?
Yeah. First, we have three groups.
Yeah.
Shia, Ahl Sunnah, Khawarij.
Correct.
And later, Ahl Sunnah split into three. Salafi, the big group, and then Khalaf, Salaf and Khalaf.
Khalaf.
Khalaf split into three again. Which are Mu'tazila, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which is exactly Ash'ariyah, and then Jabariyah. Easy?
Yeah.
So not to be confused between
No,
Ahl
no,
Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
yeah.
This is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and Ahl Sunnah. They are two different groups.
Correct.
Split at different time. So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they are against Salaf. Ahl Sunnah, they are against Shia. Something like that.
Yeah.
This is
My opinion.
your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for these three important questions. First of all, Al-Ghazali was blamed for destroying, by the way, rational thinking in the Islamic world. And recently, some scientists, prominent scientists like Steven Weinberg, a physicist, and Neil Tyson, they spoke that Al-Ghazali was one of the main reasons for the decline of the Islamic civilization. This is not true. I have two videos in my channel, YouTube channel, in English, where I refute the claim of Steven Weinberg and Neil Tyson. They are telling nonsense. Al-Ghazali never destroyed rational thinking. Al-Ghazali had different stages in his life of developing of his own thoughts. At the late stages, as we know, he becomes Sufi. And he wrote the book Al-Munqidh min al-Dhalal wal-Musil ila dhil izzati wal-Jalal. And in that book, he wrote some his own reflections of theology and spiritual experience, where he, of course, raises the spiritual experience to the top. Therefore, everything else goes down with respect to that reference. And he may have spoken or may have written some words or some phrases which are understood as if he is making the mind, the reason, redundant, needless, because you always have to think with the help of Nur al-Iman, which is something coming to your heart, not to your brain, not to your reason, but to your enlightenment. And I think this is the reason they thought he is against science, against mathematics, again. But one thing was claimed by Tyson, saying that he considers mathematics is the work of the devil. This is the exact wording of Tyson. And I said, just show me where does he say that? Not even in Munqidh min al-Dhalal, not in Ihya Ulumuddin also. In the book Ihya Ulumuddin, Al-Ghazali, as you all know, has expressed his teachings to the normal citizen, to the normal, just the average person, telling him how to be a good Muslim. That's all. He's not against thinking. But when he talks to the elite, like in Tahafut al-Falasifa or Al-Iqtisad fi al-I'tiqad, in these books, he is talking really with full support to science and scientific thinking. Maybe against philosophy, yes, admittedly. He is against philosophy because of the reason we just mentioned. He believes in indeterminism, he believes in huduth, temporality, he believes in interwoven space-time, etc. And that is how we consider now even his, he has great, in fact, praise to science in Tahafut al-Falasif. The second question, EPR. This Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox. This was suggested in 1935 in a scientific paper published in Physical Review. If you have a beam of energetic beam of gamma ray, you can create or produce rather an electron and positron. If you take the positron to the east end of the universe and the electron to the west end of the universe, and you change the properties of one of the two components, the positron or the electron, the other will immediately change. Accordingly, and because there is no signal accepted to fly faster than light, in this experiment or proposal, it shows, it was proven that the change will happen much faster than light. Much, much faster than light. Therefore, Einstein concluded that quantum mechanics is incomplete. Correct? Well, in 1982, Alain Aspect, the French physicist, proved in the laboratory that the effect or the paradox is correct. Einstein believed that no such thing will happen, although the theory suggests or predicts such a thing. But he said this prediction is the fatal point of the theory of quantum mechanics. Therefore, quantum mechanics will die one day. It's because it's incomplete. But when Alan Aspect proved it, everybody said, well, quantum mechanics is correct, but Einstein is wrong. He was not wrong in predicting the effect, but he was wrong in making the verdict that quantum theory, that the effect will never be observed in laboratory, and therefore quantum theory is incomplete. Correct? This is the full story. Now, how to interpret it according to Islam? I have a paper, actually, it is on archive, and the same paper has another version, simpler version, published in a conference proceeding, discusses this and explains physically how this happens, actually. It does. It's correct because of the recreation. Also, I can explain now using Kalam principles, the Kalam principle of recreation, the surprise of Richard Feynman on the double-slit experiment in his volume 3 of lectures in physics. Richard Feynman once said that anybody who says or tells you that he understands quantum mechanics, then you have to be sure that he understands nothing. Anybody, including the top physicists. Why he said that? Because he said, I cannot imagine how a particle like electron passing through two doors at the same time, two-slit experiment. How come that this could happen? Therefore, quantum mechanics cannot be understood. But I really appreciate the presence of some fellow physicists. But if the electron is under continuous recreation, and if the recreation time is very, very short, 10 to the power minus 23 seconds, for example, then it could pass through both slits at the same time. When your measurement time is large compared to the recreation time. And all measurements are now, in physics, are larger than the recreation time. That's why it looks as if it is passing through the two slits at the same time. If you paint a pen, red, blue, yellow, etc., the colors, the 7 colors, and you rotate it, it will look as if it is white. Is it white? It's not white. It's red, yellow, etc., all the colors. Why is that? Because your perception time is too long to figure out, snapshot the colors. But if you bring a stroboscope and look at the colors, then you will see that there are different colors. If you paint a fan, the fan, with different colors, it will do the same. You will not see the color when the fan rotates, because your perception time is lower, is too long compared to the rotation speed of the fan. Correct? That's how I can explain quantum entanglement, double slit experiment, all measurement problem in quantum mechanics, including I predict the existence of a macroscopic quantum states. Obviously, macroscopic quantum states are known in laboratory, like in Bose-Einstein condensation and in lasers. But now we can predict the presence of large quantum states, macroscopic quantum, near a black holes, based on recreation principle.
Yeah. Creation time, are you talking about Planck's time?
It's
Bigger than that?
it's slightly bigger than the Planck time, not necessarily. The recreation time for any particle equals the Planck constant divided by the total energy. Simple. Planck constant divided by the total energy of that particle. The third question about Ash'ari, Mu'tazila, and Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In fact, I have a different classification. It's not traditional, I agree, but it's taken from a traditional event. Where from do actually we have the term Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Where from? Do you know? It was taken at the time when Al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib agreed with Muawiyah and signed the agreement that he will not claim the position of Khalifa, because there were a problem after Ali radiallahu anhu wa arda died, killed by Al-Khawarij. Al-Hasan claimed that he is the Khalifa, and Muawiyah claims that he is the Khalifa. And then Al-Hasan agreed to proposal by Muawiyah that let us have exchange of power. Every time one of them will become Khalifa. Actually, if Muawiyah dies, then Hassan become Khalifa. If Hassan dies, then son of Muawiyah will become, and so on. In this agreement, Muslims were very, very happy. And they said, oh, we remember the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to Al-Hasan, سيجمع الله بك بين فئتين مسلمتين عظيمتين. So they became Jama'ah. And that year when Muawiyah took over the ruling of the Islamic world, was called Aam al-Jama'ah, by the way. So those who agree with this ittifaqiyya or agreement of Al-Hasan, those who endorse the agreement, called Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Incidentally, Mu'tazila do not. That's why they are out. But Salafis has to be part of the Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's not a question to be put in the Shishan conference or something like that. Because we have to go to the origin. The Salafi, the Wahhabi, they endorse the agreement of Hassan and Muawiyah. Therefore, they are from the Jama'ah. But Shia, no. Khawarij, no. Mu'tazila, no. They don't endorse such agreement. Therefore, they are not in the Jama'ah. You see the point? This is my opinion. I don't know whether this is a question to be put, obviously, for the fuqaha also, not for me. But as a Muslim, I am entitled to give my opinion on that, or understanding. Yes, there is one.
Can I ask just two questions?
Yes.
Two questions, very short one. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alayka salam.
When you refer to the word kalam,
Yes.
are you not referring in
Yeah.
يعني القرآن.
Could be, yes.
And the interpretation of those should be drawn from the Sahih Hadith. So I would like you to clarify to me when you use the word kalam, then you will divide kalam into jalil al-kalam and
Daqiq. Correct.
away from classical understanding. Kalam. Number two, in the creation, in the understanding of the created form, where current science lies, we need to understand the revealed form, which is Quran. Thus, we should adhere to the approach of the philosophy.
Exactly.
Please indicate to me how your presentation today has aligned itself to the approach of the philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as the word Kalamullah is concerned, it's true. Because our original source is the Quran. And this is also connected with the second question, Tadabbur Tafakkur. As you see, when I deduce the principle of, for example, recreation, I deduced it from the Qayyumiyyat Allah. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-Hayyul Qayyum. Al-Hayyul Qayyum. In fact, in my vision, in my new Kalam vision, I consider laws of nature. This morning there were another talk titled the Laws of Physics and Laws of Nature. Laws of nature are the Sunnatullah. Sunnatullah. Laws of nature. Laws of physics are our understanding or explanation to the laws of nature. Laws of nature like what? Like solar eclipse, like water freezing at certain temperature, like burning of cotton or paper when thrown to fire. This is a law of nature. Without any explanation, without any specific explanation. You just see the phenomena is a law of nature. It has to become a law, it has to be repeated. It has to have a regularity. This is the only proper. The rest, we don't know why the cotton is burned. We don't know why eclipse, solar eclipse is occurring. I know it is occurring. It's a law of nature because I see it repeated. Now, as far as tadabbur tafakkur in this, we bring it from qayyumiyyat Allah al-alam. Atomism. Atomism. Why the world is atomic? Okay, we need it. We need atomism to explain the creation of the world, the temporality of the world, as it was in the original Kalam. But mind you, also in the original Kalam, it came from tadabbur wa tafakkur in the ayah وَأَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا. وَأَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا. This was actually the basis, the theological basis, not the natural, the theological basis for inventing the concept of discreteness and to say that the world is discrete. So the Quran is always our guide to deduce the Kalam, because the Quran is Kalamullah. We cannot deviate from Kalamullah. We cannot accept that Kalamullah may be deviated or explained in a way which is contradicting other system of Islamic knowledge. I mean the basic Islamic knowledge. As far as Hadith is concerned, with all respect, Hadith is in a second place to the Quran. One important thing we should always remember, that there is always a difference between the hadith, on the hadith, and always one can claim that this rawi, the narrator, is majruh. And he brings in, I can bring you several examples. Some were considered majruh, non-reliable, and some other rijal hadith, the men of hadith, consider him thiqah, and some other consider him majruh. More than that, recently I have read a very important paper in the Kuwait, Kuwait al-Sharia, the Sharia College of Kuwait. There is a paper talks about al-wad' bit-talqeen. Al-wad', you know, there were many hadith which has been invented. It's not there. This hadith is called mawdu'. And there are different hadith, different types of wada'. To my new knowledge, there is a method of wada' al-hadith, which is called wada' al-hadith bit-talqeen. I know that Mr. say Dr. A friend of mine is very knowledgeable person in hadith. Great, has a good reputation, like a crystal. He is like a pearl of the hadith. But he is now about 85 years old. I go to him and say, about 20 or 25 years ago, you told me that this hadith, and I give him a hadith which is well known that he has narrated. I change one or two words, and then he says, did I tell that? I say, yeah, of course. This was 25 years ago, and I bring somebody else to support my claim, and the man goes next day teaching this, what I have told him. See how tricky is this method. He is very sincere. He is truthful. But unfortunately, he was deceived by adding a word, or even sometimes a letter. Min. They delete min, and they change completely the hadith, and bring a new concept of Ahlul Bayt, for example, Ahlul Bayt, contradicting the Quran. And they say this is hadith, for example. So therefore, I am sorry, you have to excuse me, that I don't want to throw myself in such a dilemma. Verifying the hadith is much more difficult than verifying the Quran. Quran is clear. Nobody can claim the Quran is distorted. It could be different interpretations, but then the safeguard is always the Arabic language. Shahrur in United Arab Emirates, one Syrian engineer, trying to distort the meaning of the Quran. But we can easily tell him to keep shut because he's telling lies, for example. Yeah. رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يتكلم في الآيات الكونية، لم يعطي تفسيرات في القضايا الكونية. Otherwise he would have talked a lot, because there are many verses in the Quran about the universe and the creation of the universe, etc. So you are right, yes. But I not necessarily supporting me by the hadith. I don't need to support myself. I support myself by the Quran. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for this line. I have a concern regarding the causal determinism.
Yes.
Because if we observe during what the Western civilization achieved until now, most of them based on causal determinism, if I'm not mistaken, where how they calculate the power and so on until they go to moon and to Mars. So that's actually based on my limited reading, that's based on causal determinism. And we in our civilization, Islamic civilization, we used to have that time the peak of Islamic civilization during the golden age, and we know many philosophers and scientists during that time, such as Ibn Sina, Farabi, Khwarizmi, and many more, Ibn Haytham. Most of them during that time based their finding probably more on closely related to Greek causal determinism as well. And what differentiates them from the current Western civilization is that they relate that with God during because they are Muslim philosophers. So during that time we achieved several, of course, achievements in scientific finding and probably technology. But now we are quite behind. Probably if you can enlighten us, why is the cause of our decline in science? It is our rejection of Kalam methodology or our rejection to causal determinism. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we should clarify one thing. As far as causal determinism is concerned, Muslims do not leave, the mutakallimun, I mean, do not leave, they haven't left the subject like this. The Ash'ari considered causality to be mustaqarr al-'ada. Mustaqarr al-'ada. So they know that causality is describing the highest probable event. The highest probability that when I throw, for example, this piece of paper from my hand, it will fall. They cannot deny that. But what they say from the philosophical point of view, from the aqidah point of view, you should not consider the falling piece of paper is a must. You should always keep, no matter how narrow, chance that the paper will not fall. Even one in a billion times, you should keep one event. Or fire burning the piece of paper, etc. Mu'tazila have 4 types of causality. Ash'ari and Ghazali in specifically has 2 types of causality. Iqtiran and mustaqarr al-'ada. The custom. Iqtiran, conjunction. Mu'tazila have 4 types. They have tawallud, i'timad, iqtiran, and mustaqarr al-'ada. So this topic of causality, according to Daqiq al Kalam, is not so easy topic. You have to go in details to explain how this causality happens. But all in all, if I make it short, I would say they didn't believe in determinism, in causal determinism, but they believed in causal relationships. And these relationships, they classified into 4 types according to Mu'tazila, 2 types according to Ash'ari. Thank you.